Welcome to the Table Read Project, a podcast where we read, perform, and discuss your scripts. Today, we are doing our post-read discussion for What the Night Leaves Behind, written by Rob Sheely. If you're just now joining us, my name is Steven, I'm a script consultant, and I played Ben.
My name is Jackson. I'm a writer-director, and I read for the narrator.
I am Sarah Lee. I'm an actor, and I read for Sarah.
Hi, Sandy Hackett here. I'm an actor, and I read for the part of Frank.
I'm Clare. I'm a screenwriter, and I read for Lily and Catherine.
If you have a script that you would like us to read, please use the submission link in the description. So, let's get into it. What I liked most about this script is how the hook itself actually evolves. The idea of a ghost returning once a night to cause trouble goes through phases. When we are introduced to this premise in the opening scene, it's framed to us as a mystery. Then we get our explanation for what's happening, and we ourselves experience it a number of times. But then, at the climax, we actually turn the hook on its head when Ben arrives twice in the same night. So we've subverted the very premise that we set up at the beginning. And finally, we get to a point where Ben fades away, never to return again. The core concept of this story goes through mystery, setup, subversion, and resolution. I think that's a really great way to explore an idea.
Yeah, I agree with you. I feel like the biggest strength of this script feels like the mystery that is well set from the beginning. Is this big concept that floats the entire story through, that you are able to relate to the characters, you are able to care about them and wonder, what they want and where they're going, but it's really about what's the answer to the mysterious question. And I think the movie also does a great job of, setting up it might be this, when you have a subversion coming, it's really good to have people look at it and go, okay, Ben killed the mom, or, do you have a version of what you think happened that I think is really believable. And you think it may be a simple character story, but because you introduce the timelines, because you introduce this big concept that I think is very well paced out, the rhythm of it is very nice without being slow, that keeps you going until the end, that I really enjoyed that.
As an actor, personally, I love the way it's written because the descriptions of you can almost see shot for shot what the movie looks like from reading it. And while the imagery is so specific, otherwise the characters are kind of left somewhat vague. You have the skeleton of who Sarah is, that she's this self-righteous 17-year-old, the typical talk back to the mom, in a kind of open-ended stereotypical way that I think gives the actor a lot of space to inhabit and make some really fun choices with.
I want to echo what you said about the writing. I really, as the guy reading the narration, I really like the way that this script is written and how intentionally it's directing your focus towards the routine of Ben's ghostly trap that he's in, but also just the way that it builds mood. I feel like it does a really, really good job of putting you in the headspace of the characters and getting you to sort of feel scared with them, and scared at the right points. It's a very, I think my favorite part about the script was how actually genuinely scared I was for a lot of it. I think it does a really good job of using its mystery to build tension. The moments at which the routine is broken, the moments at which you are kind of thrown into free fall and you're like, I don't know. Not only do I not know what's going on in a broader sense, but I know that something is off in what is happening. Like when Frank is like, he's not supposed to come back a second time. You're like, I don't even know why he's coming in the first place necessarily, but it's building tension upon tension upon tension. And I think it reveals itself and pays off really beautifully. And that's a very difficult thing to do.
Yeah, I think the suspense is really well held. And like you guys have both said, I feel like this is a director writing, and as a writer who I feel like my strength lies more in interiority, I'm more thinking about what's going on emotionally, why are people saying what they're saying? I think this person clearly has a good sense of what to show visually and what to make you wait for. I feel like that was a big part of it, of like, this is the snippet that you're seeing. This is what you don't yet know, and focusing on the unknown in a way that's not frustrating, but is exciting. That I think is a really hard thing to do. It's not something I feel I have mastered.
Yeah, there's so many details. Like this script is full of so many very specific, like, not only, the clock is here, but it's like this kind of clock from this kind of time period because it's set 19 years in the past. And it's like, it's a fun movie to visualize. Like, it's a fun movie to be like, oh, wow, this would be something really cool to watch. Incredibly hard to produce. You're right.
I'm not sure it's incredibly hard to produce because you get a great art director.
You'd have to have a great production designer,
and,
exactly. Yeah.
And production people that go, this is what and maybe you've got two different sets. This is what our house looks like over here. This is what our house looks over. It's the same. We're duplicating it so that we can go back and forth. I don't even know. But you as the director trying to tie all these pieces together and go, remember, you're going from modern day to the past, or past to modern day, and and the look of Frank's younger and clean cut and stuff like that. It's not an easy task to achieve. There's a lot of work and prep, and your shirt, fix it in pre-production. You've got a lot of work to do to so that when you get to this point, you go, we can execute this really well.
On that details point, one of my favorite of the moments is you put the clock exactly 7.5 inches from the left and 4 inches from the front. That specificity, I think, is a really great way to tell us so much about the character and how he has to be so specific with everything he does every single night. It makes me wonder what kind of other blow-ups he's seen over the last 20 years when everything is just the tiniest bit out of place. I thought that was a really great point.
And there was something, because in the first read that we did, and we just did the scene in the Zoom, I don't remember the thing about the groceries being left at the door. I don't know if that was in the...
That was in an earlier part of the script. So when we rehearsed, that detail about the groceries being left was at a...
No, but I don't believe it was in the other script.
Oh, it might not have been.
I was going, this guy's existed for 20 years. So even though he's in a cocoon, he still has some contact with the outside world. Someone's bringing him food. Food just doesn't magically show up like Ben does in the middle of the night. But that was, that solved that for me, because I said, okay, yeah, no, he's got food delivered, but he's a hermit, and he lives through his own personal hell here.
One thing I kind of building off what you were saying about like the clock, like, and just like everything that Frank does to sort of like reset the house, like a stage for the ghost to then sort of move around and play in. As somebody who's like really loves ghost stories and stuff, that's something I've never really seen before, and that was so interesting and just helped, I think, build like a really strong relationship between Ben and Frank, even though they never share a scene together until the end of the movie. I felt like I understood a lot of nuance about like the dynamic and the care between this father and his dead son, just through seeing the ways in which he's like allowing him to still operate in this space. It was very fascinating and a very interesting way to sort of visually manifest an aspect of that character and that relationship.
Yeah, I think the set itself is I like the use of the set as far as a detail that helps us, get to know Frank, because I feel like the core thing about Frank is that he has this trauma that surrounds him, and the house becomes this visual manifestation of that trauma. Like, every one of us has something in our past that we are carrying with us that we have like cleaned up and tried to make nice. But the fact that he is literally living in a little island within the destroyed house of his past is really cool. And the fact that he spends his days resetting it is also a great detail about this character that makes me think about trauma and makes me think about that desire too of like, maybe I can fix it. Maybe I can of like each day, if I reset everything, maybe I can just like keep this at bay, because he's clearly not interested in like changing anything, in undoing anything, in real healing like Sarah is and tries to do at the end. But I feel like he is stuck in that loop of not healing, but of like, I can just keep this out.
Yeah.
You know, which is really
It's like
makes
a
him
ghost
sympathetic.
horror version of Groundhog Day.
Yeah, it's almost like it's easier for him to sort of it's easier for him to feed and appease his trauma, literally in the you know, the resetting everything for Ben, than it is for him to like actually go upstairs and address it. That's why I think I like the wheelchair detail too, where it's like, you know, he can't go upstairs in a literal sense because he's in a wheelchair, but it's symbolic of his emotional inability to confront that, and how he writes the whole climax of the movie around him like finally getting out of his wheelchair and getting the crutches on so he can actually get up there. I thought was yet another really powerful way that the script used its mechanics and its world to internalize
And that scene
that
with
character
with the crutches, when he puts them on too fast, he's scrambling, and that's something as an actor you've got to rehearse with that stuff and go, okay, I got to make it look like I do this one way. I do it every day, and one day I'm in a panic and I'm not getting it right, so I've got to slow down. And a lot of detail here and that's kind of stuff is where the music comes in and the tenseness comes in, and you go, what's going on here? How is it happening? How are you going to execute this? And stuff like that. And sometimes you can just show the beginning of him too fast with the thing and cut to, her, and then back to him, and he's now advanced, to move your film along. But that's the kind of stuff you got as an actor. And being in a wheelchair and rolling, and you take him and you throw him down, you roll him down the hall, like, get the fuck out of here, and then he's in the kitchen going, you're in my way, and he doesn't care. He's going to roll over you with the wheelchair. And that really establishes relationship as to, how they're doing. So by the time that we don't even feel bad that you're lying to him anymore because he's such an asshole. And then when you come back, you're trying to solve this mystery.
Yeah, I want to talk a little bit about why I really like the relationship between Sarah and Frank in the script. And hearing you guys read it was like really, like, it really came to life for me, and I was like noticing little details about it that I made me appreciate the script a lot more. But one thing I want to point out that I particularly liked was the way they showed the progression of their relationship through the breakfast routine. Like, you understand like very clearly at the beginning of the script, it's like, he's like, he likes his instant coffee and he likes his oatmeal. That's all he likes, and it's like, and then she comes in and she's like, the first night she's like, or the first morning she's like, oh, I got some coffee and donuts. He's like, I don't fucking whatever, and he like begrudgingly, maybe I forget, like he has like a one donut or something. And then like the next morning they come, they're like sitting across, completely nonchalant, like sharing the plate of donuts and the coffee that she's bought. And then the next morning when she's gone again, there's like one donut on the plate from the last night, and just like the way it describes Frank looking at that, and it's just like it's so beautifully represented where that character was at and how he had changed over the course of the script. It was just really strong writing and something that really jumped out to me during this read.
Yeah, I wouldn't have minded even more of that, I feel, in it, because it makes me think about, I feel like in the pandemic right now, it makes me think a lot about living alone versus living with someone else and changing and letting someone into your world. I would have loved to have seen kind of like what they look like together, like what parts of it could work even more so than breakfast. Almost because I was like, okay, cool, they will end up being father and daughter. That's great. But also because I wish I had known a little bit more about his relationship with Catherine and with his first wife, because I feel like that could have been so many different things. There are so many different types of marriages, and I wonder if he was the type to like, is he happier with a wife? Is he unhappy with a partner? Like, is he very set in his ways, or did he used to be different and now he is because he's
Well,
lonely?
I'm right here. You could ask me.
But also especially a marriage that has a 20-year age gap. Like, what is that?
Yes.
I don't know. Because especially it describes, the second wife. What was her name? It wasn't Catherine, was it?
Well, yeah, 'cause
Catherine is the second.
she's the second
Catherine
wife.
is the second?
And then Lily is her sister.
Okay, yes.
Yeah.
Catherine, I think what was the word used to describe her voice? It was
Shrill.
Shrill, which is
I was very aware of that.
It's a word that is like kind of used. I don't want to say anti-feminist, but it's like it paints a very specific picture of a woman that I think is not necessarily detailed, and I think like that is something that could be expanded on a little bit, like because who is she? She's a 20-something-year-old married to like a man in his 40s. I think it said she was the secretary.
Yeah.
So like, is she the villain? Is that what we're saying? Are we seeing it through Ben's eyes that she is the villain? Like, is there a twist somewhere in there?
Yeah. Were she and Frank happy together, or did she truly trap him? And he was like, I need to take care of this baby and I need to leave my wife. And like, he was very unhappy to be with this person, or were they in love? You know, like I'd be curious to know.
Yeah, where does that go? But also, I think expanding on your point, that it would be interesting to have maybe another bonding scene between Frank and Sarah. She at the get-go does not feel necessarily like sexually safe with him. Not in like in that she has the sweatshirt. And instead of taking it off, she keeps it on, very aware of her womanhood, even though she is young. And she gets the mace out and she has it on her, prepared that like if he tries anything, because I mean, for all she knows, she is in a strange man's house that she has had no interaction with before. And like, even though they are blood relatives, that doesn't necessarily guarantee her protection. And I think I would like to see a scene that really shows her ability to let her guard down.
To feel safe with him.
Yeah, especially like to bond, to build that bond.
So, but also because he's in a wheelchair and he's got to crawl into that couch, I think there's a point, even though you pull out the mace, you kind of, in what you're talking about, which I agree with you, it would be nice to have that other scene, I think you have to acquiesce to the fact that, well, he really can't come after me.
But I don't know. I think like if we are going to believe that she like truly cares for him and it really cuts her to the core when he tells her to leave and they have that sort of bond like at the end of Act 2. Like I don't think him just being in a wheelchair would like excuse that kind of concern.
Yeah. I mean, I think that like safety versus of like
emotional safety.
Yeah. Like physical safety aside, with emotional comfort versus discomfort with this person who she's never known before, I feel like I see when she arrives that like she needs a place, you know, of like that is her need. She needs a place. He is technically family. She's going to do what she can to like elbow her way in here, right? And I feel like at the end of their time together, the question that I want answered is like, why does she need to stay with Frank? And I think in this iteration, the answer to that question is to figure this out, you know, that she has become so entwined in the mystery of Frank's life and clearly Frank's pain that he's still dealing with, that she really wants to figure out what's going on with him that will turn out to be where she came from. But, you know, even more than that, I would love to see why she needs to stay with Frank for an emotional safety, emotional
because,
reason.
I mean, it kind of alludes to the fact I think her saying that she has these friends that she's going to stay with and like, oh, look, all of these friends are competing for me. She has no friends. Yeah. She has zero friends.
Yeah.
I think she was lying.
100%.
I'm pretty sure she was
and
like
she's,
lying.
She's trying to
the
guilt
messaging.
him into like staying. So I think she has no friends. She's concerned what everyone at school is going to think when she talks about like, oh my God, you called the police. Everyone's going to know I'm going to be a freak. And she doesn't connect to her mother. She doesn't have a father. So I think like she is very deeply lonely in the same way that Frank is. And I think very similarly, they, instead of like approaching an attempt for connection with vulnerability, they are scared dogs who have been hurt and like, you know, put their guard up. They're ready to bite. Ooh, where was the point that I was making with this?
I think you made it.
But yeah, I would love a little more with them.
And I just want to say, to me, she got to be Nancy Drew too quick. Mm-hmm. She asked a lot of questions. She asked a lot of questions, but I don't know where they came from. It was just like at the ends of the one scene, you go to bed, and then the next scene, oh, I've got some questions. And I go, when did you become Nancy Drew? Yeah. And how did that transition happen from that to that? I think there's a few more questions, like in the dark while they're going to bed. You always go to bed this early? Mm-hmm. You know, and I don't think you need much, you know, to our screenwriter here, 3 or 4 questions that just kind of lead you into the next day to where she goes, oh, and I've got some more questions, and leads us to that she's been sleeping at night going, what the fuck is going on here? Yeah. You know, and then she's off and running.
Yeah. Oh, I think another transition that might be worth looking into is, so they, Sarah and Frank get in a fight, and then it's the good night. Like, they're not really speaking that night. And then that is the night that she sees Ben, and then Ben, I think that's the one that he's like, help me.
He like was that the night that he like takes her into his timeline?
I think that's the next night.
Gotcha,
maybe I'm misremembering, but I think this is the one where she just sees him vulnerable for the first time and it moves her. Mm-hmm. And then the next morning she's like asking Frank how he slept, and they're making jokes about like, have you ever had a baby sleep next to you? Like, you weren't sleeping like a baby, babies cry. I think they like tiptoe a little too too quickly into comfortability. Mm-hmm. I think, at least on Frank's end, I feel like there would be some level of like, why are you being so chipper? Mm-hmm.
Yeah, she clearly hides that from him, and it feels like a bit of a gun on the wall that we could have go off, but that kind of, I'm still cool with it because it seems to function in just on Sarah's side of things, that it's like, we know she's seen more, and that's kind of what gets her to ask more, but the gun doesn't go off on Frank's side. That could have been more like this moment in their relationship.
I think I mean a little less necessarily like him knowing that she knows something.
Okay.
And more just like they ended the night very angry at each other, and then the day starts and they're like there's
not something like specific that happens that forces them to back together again. Yeah, I think I don't know if it's like preemptive to talk about
Go for it.
Like notes and criticism about the script, but I think my biggest complaint was that I wanted to see more of a progression in that relationship. You know, I mean, like we see some, like, that's why I point to the donut thing as something that I really liked, because I was like, okay, that's a progression. I'm seeing a change. But when it came to like the actual dialogue between them and their actual like physical relationship in the script, it was kind of just, she asks a bunch of questions and he answers them, or doesn't answer them and then answers them the next morning, and then they're cool. And I'm like, I think this is a short script. This is a 76-page script. And honestly, my biggest note to the writer would be to have more things happen, have them encounter more like actual problems or actual things that they have to learn to connect and work together to overcome. And let the answers to the questions come out of that, as opposed to just scenes where they kind of just like sit and explain things to each other. So
I agree with you, and I think I wanted to just read and not ad lib, but when we were sitting there with the donuts, you know, I think, you know, just if Frank says to her, you know, and there's half a donut left, and he goes, "Are you going to finish that?" You know,
exactly.
Just the kind of thing that shows there's a relationship building, you know, and that it starts great when they're sitting at that tray table, they're both sharing breakfast. But if it goes just a little bit further and goes, "You're gonna finish that donut," you know, now you're building on what's been set up. So I agree with you 100%. And you get to direct this, you know, so you've got to bring your vision. Right now you're reading all the text, but as the director, you've got to put all these pieces together. So when you're sitting looking at that scene going, okay, I got to add a couple things here. If the screenwriter hasn't put it in, you haven't brought in someone to fix it, then you have to say, how am I going to fix this? And maybe it's just we sit there, you know, at breakfast and ad lib and go, you guys give me some more of what's going on at breakfast with you. You want more coffee, your coffee's terrible. Anything. And you just see what works. And it's either, no, that's not it, shoot again, or just try this. And then all of a sudden that relationship just builds. And you go, wow, we got some good stuff here that just kind of gives us what but your directing instinct is correct. You just got to add a couple of little things here.
Yeah.
Just adding to that point, like I wonder if you could add like a small inconsequential conflict, like maybe there's something with the delivery man, or like, maybe there's a dog outside that's annoying him, or, like something. And I know we don't leave the house, but like we do see, correct me if I'm wrong, we see her on the porch, right? So we see like through windows outside.
We see outside the house, but we're never outside the house looking in. We're always inside the house looking out. Yeah.
So maybe there's, I don't know, some sort of external conflict that then could like bring them closer together that isn't so like a plot.
Correct me if I'm wrong, Claire, but I've heard in screenwriting terms that this is called the fun and games section of a script, like where it's just like they have to encounter problems and they have to encounter things and they have to learn to work through those things together, and it doesn't necessarily feel like anything's happening, but stuff is actually happening and they are actually changing. I think this script just needed a lot more of that. I think it needed more like, her like helping out with the clock and being like, oh wow, she's like doesn't find this weird and is like actually helping me out with this, like more stuff like that where you see her actively trying to connect with him and him actually letting her in.
I think that actually exists, but it's hard to see it because we're not doing it visually. But in the next morning when she says, I'll make the hot water, and he's trying to get dressed, she's helping him. Mm-hmm. And first, get out of my way, and then she says, no, I'll do this, and I'll make the hot water, and you're in my, and you see that relationship starting to build, but because it's just a line and a line and a line, we don't really feel it or feel that we've witnessed it because it went by like that. But if you see it, and even if she goes, look, I'll make it, just that, I'll boil the water. It's not that big a deal. I'm gonna boil fucking, and even she has an attitude about it. I can boil water.
I don't know. I disagree because I think in her like assisting him in that way, I don't think her intention is in like caring about him or in like a sort of like interpersonal relationship. I think it's really like, I am buttering you up so you let me stay. Like I think I think
and
from
I'm
the
glad
get-go
he acknowledges it too.
Yeah.
Like he's like, I know what you're doing, but
it's not working. Because I think
but
she's very like tactic driven from the get-go. And then it is when she starts to finally feel comfortable around him that we see like that kind of vulnerability and like her searching for a place to belong, like that sort of like subconscious conflict start to kind of make its way out.
You're absolutely right. It's just that that's the time when she's doing things for him. She's creating her plan. I'm not saying that they're growing closer.
Yeah.
I'm going, we see the interaction, which in the writing just happens like that. But if we see you boiling the water, and while you're boiling the water takes 10 minutes to boil. So, we have to cut from, I'll start the water to I'll end, but you could have a conversation in there. Can I make you any eggs? And you go to the refrigerator. Never mind, we don't have any. Little silly things that and you would find things, but you're actually on your mission to figure out how to stay.
It's also interesting too with a script that's got so many twists in it, like so many like reveals and oh wait, no, this is actually not what it meant to be all along. Like even just the fact that Sarah has run away. Like the fact that Sarah has run away, not her mom, because like we, the audience, are led to believe in those moments that it's like, oh, well, she's got nowhere to go. Her mom just died. This is her only family left. We who have read it know that's not the case, but it's like from an audience standpoint, I feel like you would read in those moments, you would read her actions out of more necessity as opposed to what they actually are, which are, I need to get to the bottom of this.
But it also could, on some level, be that same desperation because it's very easy as an adult to be like, that's so irrational. Why'd you run away? But when you're 17, as someone who ran away when they were 17,
nice.
You feel like the world is ending and like this is not a hospitable place for me, and I am not I cannot be here any longer. My being does not permit it.
And it's true, and it's like it's important to understand too that like Sarah has had it rough. Like not only in the sense that, you know, she's like the woman who raised her, who is not technically her mother, but who she thinks is her mother, is, you know, has to work ridiculous hours to keep them afloat, which means she's got to be picking up a lot of the slack, you know. And then this knowledge and ultimate realization that her life is kind of a lie and that she doesn't know the real context of her family history. Like, I think she's driven by not just this need for answers, but like a need for closure. And that's like a very powerful, empathetic human emotion to build that character around. So, yeah, so I love it. I love these characters, but it's like I want to see more. I just wanted to see more and more dynamics and more.
I'm really happy because you guys are mirroring my thoughts exactly.
Nice.
So I think the low page count means there isn't quite enough time for the development we'd like to see. And I specifically want to look at two important moments, the low point and the ending scene. And I want to discuss how adding some of these scenes that you guys are talking about could really amplify the impact of these two moments. So first, let's talk about the low point, which I have as the bottom of page 47, when Frank says to Sarah, "You're a selfish, spoiled brat, and you're not welcome here," followed by Lily taking Sarah away, leaving Frank all alone. I like this moment a lot, and having a relationship ripped apart in an instant definitely hurts, but the thing is, I think it could hurt even more. I think our low page count doesn't give enough time to fully develop the relationship. So if we think about other movies where the low point is the relationship falling apart, I think of Shrek and Finding Nemo.
Oh, those are good answers.
So at the beginning, Shrek sees Donkey as a nuisance and Fiona as a job. Marlin sees Dory as a burden, but by the end, they are the closest of friends, and even with Fiona, family. These characters have spent a lot of time together, and their relationship has progressed so much over that time into something that we truly care about. In our story, Frank and Sarah haven't really progressed very far in their relationship. They meet for the first time on page 9, which means we only have 38 pages until this low point to actually create a relationship between these two that we care about. Frank's attitude towards Sarah stays mostly stagnant through all of that. In basically every scene, he's trying to get rid of her. And it's only after she's gone when there's a moment we think he may miss her. It doesn't feel like their relationship has progressed enough for their separation to really sting. So this is the first area that I would add more scenes. In my next draft, I would spend more time with these two in the second act, exactly as you guys said, as Frank. Well, let's think about like what the longest journey that we could possibly have is. If it's too short right now, what's the absolute longest? If Frank goes from despising her company to apathetic about it, to okay with it, to kind of enjoying it, all the way to both of them completely relying on the other. If we went through that large of a journey and that much development in their relationship, then ripping it apart would hurt so much more.
I completely agree. I think that one of my favorite screenwriting tips that I still use to this day is that the best kind of scene is a scene where you're completely distracting your audience from what they need to know. Is that you're giving them the info, but they have something else to pay attention to in the meantime. And so it's entertaining, and you don't even know that you're eating your vegetables. Like there's something else that's happening.
That's a great way of putting it.
You know?
Yeah.
And I think that this script could really soar if there was more of that. Mm-hmm. And I think the best version of that, of building this relationship, of making fun in the script, would be seeing what Sarah's missing, what Frank is missing, and how they give that to each other, which I think that is somewhat there. I think we can all agree there's something of that there. However, it feels very much like they are both lonely, and then they are both together, which is better than being lonely. However, I feel like if Frank is the guy, you know, like if they start to work in tandem and we see that Frank has been needing what Sarah's giving him, if he has been like really craving that and he hasn't had it, and he, you know, is able to accept this help and even depend on it a little bit, as you say, I love it, yeah. You know, I think that would be so beautiful. And I love your examples of relationships coming apart. I was also thinking about an animated movie. I was thinking about Monsters, Inc., and which I rewatched recently, which is so well done because you go from a point, which this is just a ridiculous premise for a movie. But of like, you go from a point where Sully as a monster is terrified of this little kid because they think that this kid is dangerous, or like, you get it, like it's gonna eat me, to the point of like, she is a surrogate daughter for him. And you go along that path with very, very many cute lines that are very manipulative that that make us love her. But you see that was something lacking, that he wanted that connection, he wanted that love, and she wanted him too. And I think that you could lend that specificity to this relationship and make this such a moving pull apart, especially if he's able to give her something that her mom can't. It feels like there is such a conflict with her and her mom that if that were given specificity of like, I'm not taken seriously as an adult, or like, I'm not allowed to do what I love to do, and Frank can give her that, and she's never had it. He listens to her. Like if there was a scene
where she was able to like open up about something, I don't know, or like, just like if he could be a confidant in some way, because that's one of the things that she yells at the mom is like, you don't believe me.
Yeah. like he's like, I believe, especially because he ends up being her dad. What can her dad give her that she's been missing her whole life? I think would be awesome. So totally agree.
The other moment that I wanted to look at was the very final scene. Now, we've talked a lot about the second act, but I want to look at this one and just think about what we can do here. This is at the point when the characters have reached the end of their arc. Sarah has a new attitude towards Lily, and Frank finally gets in touch with Ben. I think the decision to end right as Ben fades away is bold, but it takes away any opportunity there is for us to see these changes in action. We hear Sarah give a speech about how she will be a better daughter, but let's not forget what our Lord and Savior Craig Mazin says, that change is best demonstrated through meaningful action. And so this is the other area that I would add more scenes to lengthen our page count. I'd like to see what kind of new, meaningful actions these two take now that they have completed their arc. I want to see how Sarah treats Lily differently. I want to see her apologize and connect more. And Frank, now that Ben has disappeared, what will his existence be like? What does he do with the cross-stitch and the wine bottle and the clock? Seeing him do something that he would have never done before would translate better into a meaningful action, whether it's cleaning up or throwing them out or even keeping them as a memento.
Or going outside. I don't know. It's like it was such a bold choice to specify right out of the gate that this whole movie is set inside the house. So how cool would it be if the very last thing we see is them leaving the house?
You took my next sentence.
Oh, is that going to be your next thing? Oh my gosh, I had no idea. I had absolutely no idea.
Great minds, honestly. Yes, I was about to say, I know it's a spicy idea because we start the script with like, we stay inside, but what if he left? Because that would be like the most meaningful action of all if he spent 20 years inside, right?
Oh yeah, and it's such a powerful crystallization of what the conflict is. The point is that it's not just that Ben is trapped, it's that Frank is trapped.
Yeah.
And in a way, Sarah is trapped too, although in a more psychological sense. So it's like I don't think I could think of a better way to visualize that, especially given just the natural constraints of the movie, than having that as a button at the end.
Yeah. Well, and the interesting thing when you're talking about that is that she's left. She took the bus to get there, but she's left in the morning to go get breakfast, to get donuts and coffee. So something's not that far away. She's probably walked. So even though we don't see him outside through the whole movie, it can't be that far away.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Maybe she's just behind the chair and she says, where are we going? She says, I'm going to take you out for a donut.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Wouldn't that be a beautiful thing too? Because again, it's like you built a lot of their dynamic around this one particular visual or this one particular thing. That if that is the last thing that they go and do, it really shows that change. Whereas now, yeah, I mean it's a powerful, striking ending, but like I left and I was like, wait, so is Frank like dead? Like, is he like? Are they even gonna have a relationship? I don't know. It's left very open ended.
Yeah, right now the ending kind of makes me think of in Carrie. It's not how the movie ends, but like when Sue, like before, spoiler alerts, if anyone hasn't seen Carrie
Spoiler
by
for a
now.
45-year-old boy.
But at the end, when Sue is holding Carrie after, like, the rocks have fallen from the sky and she is dying, or oh no, I guess Carrie pushes her out of the way. But it's a similar kind of like Sarah holding Ben, saying like, "It'll all be okay. I'm comforting you." But then what you get in Carrie is you get the epilogue with the, like figuring out that Sue is like traumatized, and then you see the hand come through the ground, and you get like that last jump scare. And I don't know if that's necessarily like the intention of this script, but I think having that kind of like next breath of air would really add to what we got.
100%. Yeah. Honestly, like anything, anything, just something. But I'm a minimalist, so I sometimes I appreciate and that's it, we're out, great.
I mean, the
Think
end
about
result
it.
I think about of like opening the door and it's just like white.
Yeah,
like
yeah.
that's
Yeah.
Maybe
Exactly.
maybe Sarah takes his hand and helps him up, and I don't know. That might be a little too sentimental.
I got you, boy. That makes me think of my favorite. I don't know what I want for Frank and Ben at the end of this. Like, there are so many options, but my favorite moment in their relationship, of course, is when the caricature of Ben melts away, of the angry Ben who did terrible things, and like he sees his innocent son when the timelines come together. And that gives me way more questions than answers that I feel like could lead to a great ending for them. But like, it really makes me wonder if that's how Frank has been thinking of his son this whole time. Because he does know the truth mostly of what happened that night. He doesn't know everything. But like, I'm like, has he created that in his mind of his son to make himself feel better? Is that just like kind of a lie that he tells and he knows is not true? Or like, does he really believe like my son is evil? And then in that moment, he's able to strip that away. I feel like that kind of ending, the next step of whatever that is, feels really potent to me. Feels like a good ending for them.
Michael Jackson singing.
Yeah. I think this script is so interesting because I have so many issues with it, and it feels so incomplete. But it also it excites my imagination so much more than most scripts that I read. And again, maybe that's just because I'm such a fan of this genre, and I'm such a fan of moody ghost horror movies and stuff that I'm just I'm gonna love it no matter what. But it's just hearing you give that note is so cool, because it's just oh man, if you'd have taken it further, that would have been great. But even as is, that's such a powerful image and raises so many interesting questions. It's I definitely think this is a script I would encourage this writer to continue to develop, because I think in 3 or 4 drafts, it could be A24 level. It could be good.
Yeah, I feel like there's more to be mined, that this concept is so good that it hooks you in, and it's something that I haven't seen before. You're playing with timelines, but it's not in a way of multiverse, it's very simple. And so if there were just a little bit more to it, twists and turns, and especially character driven stuff that I think we're all hungry for, it could really be something cool. And I'm trying to think of a comp. I also, when I saw It Follows, this is a spicy take, but I wanted to rewrite It Follows a little bit. It's a very spicy take, but I was like, this concept is so cool, but I don't know anything about this girl except that she is sexually attractive to lots of people, honestly. That she's very scared of this thing, and all the boys in the movie want to have sex with her. And I was like, but she's more than that, and that's there's so much to be said about female characters. That's a very typical thing. But as far as just character in general, I think that if that movie had richer characters, that I was whoa, their backstory, and whoa, their dynamics between them, I would have been this is a stellar story. And I felt very similarly to this, that I was I love this concept. I love this structure. I am super engaged. If these people were more rich, and like we've been saying, if there's space to play, if these people were more rich in a way that's really memorable to the viewer, you could really go somewhere.
Yeah.
I think I would also look at rewriting some of the dialogue between Lily and Sarah during the fight scene, especially because it seems like, I don't know, with fragmented mother-daughter relationships, there's so much that can be said without being said, that has been said a million times, that is dug so deep that like a certain look can like bring something up. So I think right now where the dialogue is it's resting in a little bit of a generic kind of space, like the "you don't listen to me, I work, you don't respect me, you're a spoiled brat."
It's like this is stuff that we can imply
Yeah.
from just looking at them and who they are and the fact that
And I
she's done all these
understand that a
things.
fight
Yeah.
needs to occur here because there needs to be some parental punishment that Sarah ran away yet again and put us in this situation. But like, how much are we aware that Frank is in the room? How uncomfortable are we that like, because, but then also maybe Lily's very comfortable yelling at Frank and yell at like, I don't know, but I just would love to see more specificity with Lily's character as well, because I don't know, that working woman that's like a little hardened, that's a little disconnected from the current situation because of like just trying to manage, like all of her energy is just going to managing. I think that's interesting, and I think we could expand on that.
I agree.
Lily becomes fascinating to me at a certain point in the script when you realize that she just took in her sister's kid.
Like without
as a baby, you know, and she signed up for 18 plus years of this. And, you know, we knew her as just like the put upon mom, but like she's the put upon mom who reached out, you know, and who took in this half orphan, so that Frank didn't have to deal with any of it. You know, he just like totally pushed her out, and it was a selfless thing. He wanted to protect her, but like that moment made me go, wow, I really don't know Lily at all. And I'd love to.
Because is she kind of like in Blue Valentine? Like, is she, you know, is like that her, like if we were following like a whole movie about her, like, is that kind of her arc? So that way, when she is stepping into our movie, she is a fully fledged human being that like carries weight. And like when she says something, it means something to Sarah and Frank alike.
Yeah, it felt like she was broadly painted as like nagging mom. And I'm like, knowing even just what's in the script about this character, I'm like, well, no, she's like clearly more than that. Like, if not, then it's like, well, there clearly needs to be more of a relationship between her and Sarah that explains why they talk to each other the way that they talk to each other, you know, because it was like, yeah, I mean, again, I think the biggest note would be to just, you know, continue to flesh this out.
Yeah.
I think it's a really good sign too. That
Yeah.
we're saying more is a really good sign for what is actually on the page. If we're saying pull back here, rewrite this, that would be a less promising sign. So I think the fact that we're saying give us more just speaks to the quality of what is actually here so far.
I do want to say it's funny because I'm like, all of our notes are like, give us more, but I do want to like echo what you said about the dialogue. Like, this is especially because this is such a mood piece and this is like such a visually driven script and we're getting so much character through the visuals. Just don't talk so much. Like, there's so much talking. There's so many words. And it was like, honestly, it kind of perfect for a table read. Like, it made for a very compelling table read. And I think it's going to make for a very compelling listen. But like, as a director, I also like envision those scenes and how those scenes would play out. And I'm just like, they're just kind of like spouting exposition at each other. Like, that's not very fun to watch.
Starts with, I have a question.
Exactly.
I have a question.
Yeah.
I have another question.
Yeah.
Like, I think, I don't know.
Yeah. And it's like, if you're going to do like have her ask the questions, it's like, you know, have it come out of like, have it be motivated by something in the action, you know, like don't have it just be like, oh, by the way, what about this? What about this?
Maybe she's writing paper. I don't know. Or like, you know, I don't know. She has some sort of like added interest to it that like makes it more like selfish and personal. And then like that is released. I don't know.
Yeah, and I don't think Frank you're right about all that. And I don't think Frank would be that forthcoming with answers.
Yeah.
I think there's a way you have to find to manipulate him to get around, you know, like set the stage So when you first got hurt, right? And he doesn't want to answer, but somehow you've nailed enough that it intrigues him to want to respond, as opposed to, you're absolutely right, hey, can I ask you a question? Oh, okay, I'll answer.
A good version of that I've seen used well a lot of the time is if, say, they're in the kitchen and she was like, Mom said you haven't gone grocery shopping in 10 years. And he's like, well, that's not true. And he is spurred on to give her information of like, Mom said that your son's crazy. And he's like, well, no, he's not. And then he kind of is able to roll out his story because he's like, you're a young spoiled brat and you don't know me.
It's motivated by his need to justify himself. It's coming from a character place. So
right. When she's gone out in the morning to get the donut, she says, the guy who delivers your groceries says you haven't been out of the house in 10 years. Mm-hmm. And you spoke to him? I told you not to touch anything. Well, that was, leave everything as is. Well, that was inside the house.
She's also very clearly done her research. Like, I think before coming here, I don't think she discovered the box and was like, oh, look, my cousin murdered people. Let me bop, bop, bop. Like, I'm sure I don't know if, maybe not go to the library. People don't do that anymore. But maybe she spent a long time Googling in that sort of like, I don't know, Twilight montage when she's looking up.
People go to the library.
I go to the library, but I don't know. I don't know if the Gen Zers, like in high school, just like chilling at the library computer. I don't know. I think everyone's got Macs
Microfiche.
I also had an issue with those newspaper clippings because she finds them, reads them, and learns them off screen before we even start the story. I think that'd be a cool thing to discover during this story, because she comes in with all this exposition and pointing out your dialogue comment. It is a little heavy when these clippings are brought up. So maybe when she's Googling or at the library, this is what she finds, then comes back to confront him with it exactly like you guys are saying. There's just a lot to play with here that if you just take away this exposition.
And maybe you see that before at the very beginning of the movie, that's where we meet her, is in the library going through the clippings. And then she disappears. And then we go to the house and we see the whole thing with Ben. And we go, wait, what happened to the girl? Where's she? Until she shows up at the door. Dun, 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 dun.
Yeah. There is a version of this movie, and I'm not sure it's the right one, but something that popped up to me so early on because she asks so many questions, it would be like if we don't know who she is at first and she's kind of posing as a journalist. If this story were more public, right? Of like, oh, like we spoke on the phone, like I'm just writing a small piece and he's like, I'm not interested. And she's able to, elbow her way in there. And then like, it's a slower reveal that like, she is also, in his family, or she has a much more personal reason for being here. Then you could have a really easy framing to a lot of these questions. And you could be like, oh, well, these two are butting heads. But then like, oh, wait a minute, there's more. It's a very different movie, and I'm not sure that's the right approach, but I feel like you do need some kind of reason for her to be really grilling him that feels organic, as opposed to of like, hello, I am here, I have come into your life. And
I have lots of questions.
Why she doesn't run. Like why as a person? Because the way she's kind of structured right now is like, she's the punk. She's like a punk kid, bad kid, runaway kid. And like, maybe she is all of those things, but also like, maybe she's, I don't know, very passionate about journalism. Right. Or like,
you're like, I know who this is, but you don't quite yet.
Yeah.
I remember it was interesting in our rehearsals, you were like, you described Sarah as like somebody who listens to a lot of true crime podcasts. And it's funny because it's like, that's never specified in the script. That's just like, you just gleaned that and you were so right. I think like that's totally.
Well, like, no, I mean, my sister's 17. She would hate this. She would not do any of these things. But then me, on the other hand, I love true crime. My favorite murder is my cup of tea. So like, I think this is something that under the right circumstances, 17-year-old Sarah Lee may have, I don't know, thought was a smart thing to do. Like, I don't know. You gotta like prime the setting a little bit for her to feel comfortable in this space.
100%. We're going for an hour. Yeah.
Thank you so much for this rich conversation. What the Night Leaves Behind, written by Rob Sheely. Thank you to Jackson and Claire and Sarah Lee and Sandy for helping us produce this. And thanks for Chris, the sound guy in the back.